Everybody, well, let's get started. My name is Nate Naverson. I'm the founder of themedattraction.com. We have some wonderful people here. MK Haley is our MC, and I'll go ahead and turn it over to her as we start our first session for the Themed Attraction Student Showcase.
2024. So I want to start with a little bit of housekeeping first. And then we'll have about 8 minutes for feedback per group, and then we'll do a little bit of a wrap up. And so in general, how this goes is, in the event, any feedback that any particular reviewer gives is feedback for all of you, right? So if the first one or two has something about, wow, y'all should really spell check, like we've said that. We don't need to say that for every single other one. So just take those notes for everybody. What Nate has put together here is really quite remarkable. I think this is the 4th year, right? He put this together when we first had the COVID, because all the college students lost internships. They weren't having interaction with professionals or a working environment, and most importantly, they weren't getting feedback. They weren't getting portfolio material either, but that sort of engagement with professionals, he would want to make sure that at least what we could do, how we could fulfill that. So we put together this showcase, which allows students to submit work for review by industry professionals across a wide range of disciplines, creative, engineering, producers, and provide you with feedback. So the single most valuable thing out of this is not the feedback you're getting today, it's the people in the room. Like, have a look around at who the reviewers are, LinkedIn with them, connect with them, because those ongoing relationships are what's going to be of value here. We're going to give high level feedback only, right? We could probably give an hour's worth of feedback on each project, but sort of the very high level points what we're going to cover today. And keep in mind that please do reach out to any of us, or reach out to us if you want me to connect you to somebody of another flavor who can give you some feedback. So the first time each of our reviewers gives feedback, if you give a little introduction to yourself, and also like what's your secret sauce. Like Logan, for example, is a producer with experience across a wide variety of stuff. There's no such thing as a degree in producer, right? So anybody who's interested in that, he might be a subject matter expert to ping for that. My name is MK Haley. I was at Walt Disney Imagineering and R&D for 27 years. My original training was real-time gaming for VR, real-time animation. But then I did very little of that. I was in R&D for most of my career. I've also taught themed entertainment design for about 30 years. So resumes, reels, projects, pitches. We also all weave through everything we're going to talk about, a layer of just best practices for professional presentation, which is not something people will give you. Like the fact that Nate had to say, turn your cameras on, like that, he should never in a million years have had to have said this. This is a formal professional interaction. Your camera should be on. You should be sitting up straight. You shouldn't be snacking, right? Just those sorts of things. So intersprinkled in feedback on your individual projects. We are also all resources for best practices for personal and professional presentation. So if you're ready to go, we'll kick things off. We have an order of events here. And so the first one we'll provide feedback on is the retro view. So anyone in particular want to take the lead on kicking off the feedback there? Logan? Ryan? Anyone?
I think Ryan's waving his hand.
Yeah.
Off you go, Ryan.
Oh, yeah. Darn those phones.
And also, while Ryan's introducing himself, like on the side, you're googling him, right? Because you got a pretty, you got a pretty impressive line of feedback givers here. So like, do your homework. They're pretty awesome.
Yeah, sorry about that. I'm on my way to a meeting I didn't have planned, so I apologize. I'm not as professional sitting at my desk with good lighting as MK suggested. I'm normally following those rules. But overall, I was really impressed with everything. Let me just go back there a second. I'm Ryan Hardman. I'm the President and Chief Creative Officer at Zeitgeist Design and Production here in Pasadena, California. I was also a Disney Imagineer when I was just 20 years old. Went on to Universal Creative, Warner Brothers. I've worked for most of the design firms and decided I want to do it on my own. I've had a couple different companies, and Zeitgeist has been around almost 14 years. And we host a Zoomcast you should all know about called The Spirit of the Time. It's on our website, on YouTube, and on all podcast locations. And we have become the industry's really the only archive of history and wisdom of location-based entertainment, because we interview the best of the best, bring them on our time machine, go back to their beginnings and follow them through their careers to where they are today. So it's always a fascinating journey. I would check it out. But I was really impressed with everybody's presentations. Really mind-blowing to see that level of professionalism from students. It made me feel good. And the first one I felt was a little derivative of the Primetime Cafe, to be honest. And I wondered if somebody could help me understand, because what I saw was more of a design for a website than the actual experience itself. So MK, maybe you can help me understand that one, because that one threw me for a loop a little bit.
Well, we have the students themselves here to talk about that.
Oh, perfect. Okay.
So any of the students here to give some feedback on what was the intent versus how it was interpreted? Do we have nobody from this team here?
Weird. Okay.
Okay, so just in general, some feedback. Ryan dropped a few really useful bombs I hope you took note of. He has a brilliant online, it's an archive, it's a repository of history and journeys of folks in all areas of the industry, and there's very little, if anything else like that out there in the universe. It's really tidily organized. They're nice, tight little presentations. He's also started several companies, worked for major corporations, and started several companies. Do I want an LLC? Like, there's all kinds of great data to dig into there. And often the projects that we are comparing your work to, 300 people and 5 companies worked on it, right? And you're 1, 2, 3, 4 student teams. So some of the feedback we give you, it's never intended for you to have hit that mark, right? But like in general, you need to know that this is what the mark is. And it's perfectly acceptable to do something that feels like the Primetime Cafe. That doesn't need to just be one in the world like that, but own that. Say, I like this for this and this reason. I was inspired by this for this and this reason. Here's the market it's going into, why it's not competing with that. You just need to own it. Like Ryan opened up and he says, I'm on the way to a business meeting. That's why I'm in my car. And it's not because this is less important to him. It's because it's so important. He sat in the car. So somebody I saw flashed up, my camera doesn't work. Perfectly acceptable. Just let us know that. Just communicate that so we don't think that you're bowing out. I'm on my iPhone, by the way, because my laptop doesn't work right now. So there's some really nice nuggets to pull out of there. So Nate is recording this, so we can provide this feedback to all the teams after the fact. Was there anybody else who, for the record,
and real quick, the person who created this project did not respond. So some of them don't check their university email over the summer, or some of them have internships, but they are relying on the recording. So for all intents and purposes, let's just pretend like they're here, because they will be virtually at some point.
So anyone else have any feedback on this first one?
Sure, I'll add on. Logan Zwocki, project manager at Sally Dark Rides. So for this particular attraction, like Ryan mentioned, at first it was a little confusing as to what exactly I was reviewing, but from what I took from it, this project shows a good understanding of basic UX UI design principles, because it is essentially an app, and it goes through the steps of how the app would be associated with this themed bar or pop-up event at a bar, which I like that tie-in, as that's a very popular trend right now and very relevant to the industry. The biggest issues that I found with the project as far as the presentation were the typos. So there were several, and the what I would sort of call a stereotypical 50s, 60s theming without any truly unique personality. That was the only thing I kind of missed. I like the creativity in some of the menu items, but the overall aesthetic and concept, I felt could use more work, making it more of a unique experience instead of just simply a themed experience, if that makes sense.
Yeah, and like we said, this is feedback for everybody. Everybody, if it's underlined in red, it's probably not spelled right. Have your friends look at it, have somebody, because it's in your head, it's fine, right? You just sort of gloss over it with your eyeballs. But make sure that you do review this. One of the things that's very common is, in terms of how these things manifest in space, is a plot twist, a surprise ending, which is great. That's what makes your story arcs pretty fun. That is absolutely not how you pitch it. You open up with, this is a blank. It's a web interface for a restaurant. It's a water park. It's a zoo. Like, there needs to be no surprises so that anyone who is reviewing it has context. They're looking at it with that lens. Oh, this is aimed at toddlers. Oh, this is aimed at a multilingual market. So just be mindful of those differences, pitches versus actual experience.
I'll add a thought here. Mark Spencer, Falcons Creative Group. I'm a creative director, master planner. But similar to the other two comments, I first opened this up and I didn't have that initial pitch, so I didn't know what I was looking for. And as a creative director, I'm going, okay, this is a experience. So I just looked at it from that point of view. But then it became clear to me it was more about UX and UI design, which I am not. But luckily, we have a UX and UI designer in Falcon. So I brought him over to my desk and I said, tell me what I'm looking at, because I really didn't know how to evaluate it. And so a lot of my comments that I provided that I think you do have access to were from him essentially. But he did say that what was good about it was it showed the process and the user flow maps and the thought behind it, which is not something I ever have to do. So it was hard for me to evaluate that. But he did comment some of the like the button animations were overused. So if we're looking at it from just a strict like graphic design of a website, you know, the buttons would like everything was animated, and sometimes too much is too much. You know, it wasn't like you kind of would scroll through the page and everything popped out at you and you kind of almost lost where you were. So if you're looking at just from a strict website layout, those are some of his comments. But other than that, like story wise, I think we kind of hit some of that. Our criteria for rating has a lot to do with guest experience and journey and things like that. It was hard to grade and score on that. So if I had to kind of just throw out the scoring card and just comment on the UI UX stuff, that's the most that I could offer.
Yeah, I wasn't kidding when I said Nate has put together a pretty deep pool here. You don't just have Mark, you had his whole team. You had Mark and everyone else in his company.
I want to agree with Mark. I just want to say it was difficult to evaluate because we didn't get a real sense of the place and the guest experience and what it really looked and felt like and the activities, because there was so much emphasis on designing the website. I just wanted to get that across.
And one thing we see every year, not just in this experience, but in all kinds of experiences, the criteria we have amongst ourselves for review, people are always inventing new things, right? And so we're not specifically asked for feedback on that thing. So, but you want to make sure and acknowledge that thing. So ask again, tap us. We'll give you feedback that wasn't included in like our scoring sheet, but was worthy of a mention. And that's what's the beauty of we've all chosen a very dynamic industry. So let's move on to our second one, which is the Minecraft One World experience.
Well, wait, Terry Brown's here and he got his mic to work, so we should definitely.
Can I jump in real quick, MK? Just I had my hand raised. Sorry. One of the things, and I didn't do this specific evaluation, but looking at these, there's some really good language here. But if I take away 50s and 60s from the description, it could describe almost anything, any experience. And so the note that I would give is to read through and make sure that you're being specific, and it isn't just generalizations. And I'll use a line here. We value customer enjoyment and strive to exceed their expectations. I think we could say that for everybody's.
Yeah.
And so be careful when you present that you're not being so general in your description that someone can't get to the heart of it. And so I think that's a note for every one of these that are out there, is make sure that you're getting a potent story and a specific story as you go, or a
Yeah,
description.
at the front, when you open up, some sort of generalities are nice because then it makes it seem feasible. Like, yep, this is doable. But what differentiates it is your specific, your unique creative innovation here.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And by the way, I'm Michael Blau. I'm president of Adirondack Studios, and I am a creative designer, MFA in set design as well. But I do run Adirondack Studios. Thanks for letting me jump in.
Great.
And
I'll
Terry's
just
on
quickly
mic
say,
up now? Yep.
thank you. So of course, I agree with, my notes were what we've all said just now, but I thought the only note that might be worth adding at this point then is I always think it's really important to declare very carefully what you're doing, what the framework is, so that people who are looking at it judge you according to what you want to be judged by. And I was like some of you, I wandered into this one looking, okay, what's it going to look like? What's it going to feel like in here? And I got that and had to backtrack a few times, and then, okay, I get it. If you set the framework of this is graphics and it's web design, and it's kind of branding, then you can evaluate it on that basis. So I think, there's a nice effort in here for a person trying to, within the boundaries of where she was trying to get. So I kind of gave it, a reasonable score based on what she was trying to achieve. And I wished that it, had an environment to go with it, but I guess each of these projects is allowed to define itself. That's it. That's all I had to say.
And if like right on the front end, it just said, my technical proficiency is this, graphic design and UX design, you'd be like, great, that's what I'm evaluating, and you've nailed that. But without the expectations clearly set, we don't know what we're looking at.
I apologize. I should have said Terry Brown, creative director, FOREC. 100,000 years of experience, and most of it, not at school, but in front of clients and being beat up and stuff like that. So that's where I come from.
Third shift catwalks. All right, now let's jump into our second one here. Is there anyone from the Minecraft team?
Hello. I'm the one who submitted for the Minecraft Overworld.
All right, you want to start this time with Terry for feedback?
Sure. Hi, Emmanuel. That was a really interesting departure you took. I mean, on one hand, I was feeling that because you've, gone with Minecraft, that means there's a certain kind of language that's there already that you are working within. So it means like at a concept level, there's already a certain definition. And at first I was kind of like a little bit not that happy with that because it felt like a shortcut. But I have to say, we've done a lot of Lego parks, and there's a similar kind of parameters in a way that comes with that. So I kind of jump over that. I think that so that was an interesting place to start from, I thought. I also thought that your use of reusing a mind space was also a really cool idea. And I like that you had gone into some iterations on that, but I kind of wished you had gone a little deeper into that aspect of it. Like what parts of that space did you use for what ways? What did you find unique in that space, whether it was the microclimate or just the features of the place that you might have engaged with, to give the place a bit more of a bespoke or a possessive place, I guess. So I don't now I feel like it's good that you kind of tried to go with the Minecraft. I would like to have seen just a little more in depth on the site, I think.
Logan, you want to mention maybe IP?
Well, I love working with an IP. That's what I do pretty much every single day. It feels like at Sally Dark Rides with all the projects I've been working with lately. So very, very familiar with IP, very familiar with the licensing and agreements and struggles working with an IP as well. For this, a lot of times IP is just thrown on because it's popular. This is a popular IP, but what I really liked about this approach, like Terry mentioned, is this is a creative approach because Minecraft actually has something to do with a mine. So the fact that you're tying together this actual mine, this historical site, acknowledging the history, but making it a contemporary source material, adding a whole new relevance to the site that essentially is just discarded because it's an old mine. So I found that very intriguing. I thought your the design of the deck, the boards, the overall lands were well executed, with only a few typos to fix. My 7-year-old son very much loved this concept, as well as he is obsessed with Minecraft right now. So overall, I was very surprised by your creative approach to repurposing this old mine.
And none of us here are lawyers, so we can't give you legal advice, but here we go. You have absolutely no right to use Minecraft. And students will be all like, oh, academic fair use. That is not what academic fair use is or how it works. In the history of ever, rarely has a company gone after you for that, but they have closed the portfolio and handed it back. And so if there's a company that really is a stickler for use of IP, theirs or anyone else's, you may be missing out on an opportunity to have your work reviewed because they can't look at it. And so that's dicey. You don't want maybe some of your best work to not be able to be shown because you had no right to use it. There's a school that makes their students do a movie overlay on a local coffee house every year, which I like beg them, stop. And the smart students do too. They submit a Star Wars coffee concept to their teacher, and they submit a space coffee shop for their portfolio. So they do get to repurpose some of their work, but with an understanding of what IP they have the right to use and not to use. So what if you do have permission? One of my faculty members got permission for students to use the Boba Fett model that ILM gave us. And I'm looking at it, I'm like, oh my God, why have you guys all got? I'm like, oh, you need to put that on there. You need to say used with permission from ILM. And then you get double credit. Great idea and smart enough to get permission. Has anyone else here worked on repurposing an existing space? Can give some feedback? There are several themed attractions in mind spaces in the world right now, and they are lovely. As you had mentioned, they've got this microclimate that's really nice. A lot of them have a bit of nostalgic appeal to the communities they're in because they're often some of the primary industries. So that's a really smart upcycling kind of idea, to reuse an existing space, and very specifically for what that space is good at, which is it's a mine and it's comfortable inside.
I wanted to mention there is a park in Spain called Terra Mítica that I did some work on years ago, and that is also based in an old mine space. That's really cool. But I wanted to say this is one of my favorite projects that we saw. I'm not a Minecraft person myself, but I also shared it with my kids who thought it was right on. And the presentation was good with all the different concept art and whatnot. So kudos to this one. I understand the rights issue, but in terms of creativity and understanding how to present an entire park concept, I thought this did really well.
And was this just a solo, or did you work on this with other folks, Manuel?
It's a solo thesis project.
Wow.
Yeah, well done you. That's a lot of apples you took a bite out of there.
Thank you.
Well, I'll add just one quick comment. I mean, I think solo projects, it shows the cohesiveness of it all shows because there's one creative director running the thing. And that's always the challenge with some of the group projects, is you kind of can tell, oh, student A did this, student B did this, obviously. So I think it was really good how cohesive it was. And I agree that the key art was nice to see. I think because it was a mine, and because the site was very dramatic and repurposed, there could have been a little bit more analysis of that site, or even like a section or something that's a little more technical to describe it, because the first sheet was, or the first site analysis, there's some good stuff there, and then you go look at all the art and the lands, and it just kind of felt very flat, like it just, oh, it'll work out, and so there's some, if you're taking an actual site, there is some responsibility to try to respond to the site itself. And of course that's me coming from a master planning perspective too, but that's just one thing. And also caveat all of this. We tend to be very critical sounding in this. It's not that we're being critical, other than we're trying to give you the good feedback. So there's a lot of great stuff in it. We're pointing out the not great stuff. So don't take all of our notes too personally, because there was a lot of good
well,
stuff in
well,
here.
also because like I think we definitely want to go here. We're like, we want to see this happen.
Yeah.
So here's the few things you need to do to make this happen.
Yeah.
Thanks. Time to roll over to our third one, Coast. We have any representatives from that project?
Yes, hi.
Good day, welcome. Anyone want to give first feedback? Michael, what's your thoughts on this? Mr. Blau, have you lost Mr. Blau?
Oh, I'm sorry, it was me. I'm sorry. Yeah. So I like this. I had some notes about this. I think it's for concept art, it's a good start. The idea was to demonstrate the idea of theme park operations as well as concept art. And for the theme park operations, I thought that she did a good job analyzing the site, and all the, kind of circulation and back of house and all the realistic things that you have to think about regarding organizing a theme park. And then for her aspiration with regard to the concept art is where I come from, really that part of it. And I love to see people starting and trying to kind of work their way into the idea of concept art. And these are mostly overviews, like taken from above to show you how things work. And for me, there's really two kinds of concept art. And when you're getting into a project like this, the overview one that helps to explain this is where things go, that, feeds that side of your brain that wants to know how things are put together. And then there's the visceral side, what's it going to be like to be there, which is usually you have to get down to ground level and you have to start dealing with human beings and what are they doing? How's the light work? All of that. And that's where you're kind of thematic and I guess you're dramatic, stage setting, looking at it that way, comes in. So I would say that the trick for somebody who has that aspiration, for me, first thing is follow your heroes, the renderers that you really like or place things you've seen, and parse that and figure out how they're doing it. That's one. The second one that I've learned a lot about is be quick. Figure out ways that you can do shorthand of any kind to visualize, so that you don't just get stuck on the idea of I got to set up and I have to really work this. Allow yourself to quickly iterate. The faster you can do that for yourself, the better you'll get to a result that you really like. Compositionally, content, all of that. Practice drawing people a lot so that you can draw people actually doing things so that they're doing something that furthers the story in the site and not just or the view and not just being, scale or, type of people. And that's it. It's about to me, I think that second part, she's got the stream of organizing a plan and things, started well. So for the concept art, I would say just move toward the visceral and the sense of what emotion are you coming across with.
And that is such a desirable skill in the workforce. And it's hard to show in your portfolio how fast an illustration took, right? So knowing that this is a very valued skill, you might want to have in your portfolio 10-second sketches, 30-second sketches, 5-minute paintings, right? Let me know what I'm looking at, especially if you know that that's a value.
Very good, yeah.
Yep, if I can, Terry, thanks for that and setting up. In looking at this, I almost wanted some of the concept stuff earlier to tease me as to what the detail would then bring later. And I think that you went in a very organized manner to say flow map, evacuation, attractions, all of those things. But and your description started to do that. I almost wanted you to tease me with the story to then go further and deeper into the presentation and then get into the details with regard to the finishes and the ground samples and all of those things. But let me do a quick 3-second to a 30-second and then go into the depth of 3 minutes of detail. I found myself skimming through quickly the detail stuff and wanting to get further into the, once again, to the heart of what's there.
And I think we're all familiar with the idea of the elevator pitch and then more of a deep dive. Everyone, both ourselves, we should be able to communicate as well as all of our work. Elevator pitch. 5 seconds, one sentence. Then you should have like a shorty paragraph about either you as a creative or an industry professional, and then the project, and then you got your huge resume and portfolio. But we need to be able to communicate at all levels. One thing I started seeing recently, and it's not everywhere, but we'll see if it catches on, is presentations with a table of contents. So the first slide says we're going to introduce the team, we're going to introduce the project, and so that I'm sitting there going, well, how are they going to build this? If I've seen a table of contents, I know that the last thing we are going to talk about is the partnership with a construction company. So I don't know that that's going to catch on, but in the past year and a half or so, I have seen pitches from both students and industry that has a table of contents to sort of ground everyone before we start, and then they dig into it. And sometimes that may be useful, and sometimes it might be god awful for your audience, but think about that in response to what Michael was saying. So he knows where he is at all times in the presentation and what's coming up.
Are we talking about the Costa Carolina park, the Hard Rock
Yep.
Park?
Yep.
Okay. Yeah, I want to talk about story for a minute. You know, as somebody who's worked on countless backstories and mythologies, and dating back to Pleasure Island in the late 80s, early 90s, it's always hard to introduce characters and stories that most people don't have any reference to. And I just found myself kind of, I mean, I don't know North Carolina history. I don't know if these are real people, real characters, but it was not super engaging to me from a story standpoint, because these were not archetypes that, I mean, it didn't give me a sense of human aspiration, or I didn't really know what I was, you know, who these people are. The quest didn't really make a whole lot of sense to me. So not to be negative, but you know, using themes and stories that are maybe a little more universal that people can grasp onto, or just, you know, traditional things we already know. Start with something we know and go from there, versus introducing specific people and characters and stories that we just don't know what's going on.
Or open with North Carolina Tourism Board hired us to tell their stories, right? I need to know, are these real people or not? What is your end goal? And then say, these may not be characters you're familiar with, so introduce me. And if you're working with real people in history, you better get it real. Several years ago, we had a pitch on the Salem witch trials, and the team didn't know the Salem witch trials were real. And so some of the things they were doing was, and I'm a New Englander, right? I'm like, whoa, my God, what are you saying? And I'm like, Abigail Williams was 14. They're like, wait, what? She was a real human? So yeah, so get those things right. But again, it's just about communicating. What's the intent? What's the challenge? I went to a beautiful exhibit, the Te Papa Museum in New Zealand, that the team from WETA did, was about a very particular battle in World War I. 80% of the guests were international. So this was a critical moment in New Zealand's history, but the other guests didn't really know what it was. And so all I did was just have a little plaque up front, just a little tiny bit of context. And then suddenly you're like overwhelmed and moved. Oh my God, these are real people. This is a real story. Yeah, make me, I'm gonna have this make a t-shirt. Make me aware, make me care, give me a call to action. What is the thing? Why do I care about it? And what do I do when I leave, right? Do I come back? Do I suddenly care about recycling? Do I want to get deeper into North Carolina or something else history? You can really extend your guest experience and impact if you sort of give me a to-do after the fact. Maybe it's just hum the tune you taught me. Anyone else have any feedback on Coast of the Carolinas? It's also nice to connect it to you, right? If this is a personal project. Did you all see the smile on Ryan's face when he mentioned Pleasure Island? He loved that project. And if you can get a smile across your face when you're describing your project like him, because there's a personal connection, by all means, run for it.
Yeah.
I'll just have one quick comment. I didn't say much on this one, but the one observation I said that I haven't heard said yet, but this being more of like a retrofit project or something that exists that you're improving on, I feel like it could have done a little bit better job at what was existing, why it wasn't working, and this is how it fixes the problem. Like there wasn't that type of narrative within this. And so to some extent, like looking at the plans and layouts, I was like, oh, those are great. And then I'd go back to the photo. I'm like, oh, because that's just what already was there, you know, or certain things. So saying, you know, really identifying, like it looked like the bridge was moved and it looked like the bumper boats or something were added, but it never told us why that was a choice made. So I think just if you're doing a retrofit, you got to define what the problem was and why you're retrofitting.
And one thing, almost all the reviewers have the exact same feedback, right? Because they all have picked up on the same opportunities for improvement. Here's what's interesting, here's what's confusing. And so that's why we're trying to rotate up who speaks first, because for the most part, they'll each have 10 solid points and their 8 are the same. And 2 are, he comes from a master planning lens and, Logan comes from a finance plan lens. So if everybody has the same feedback, that's really feedback you do really want to pay attention to. All right, moving on to our next team. We have Voyager. Anyone here from that team?
Hello.
Good day, welcome. Who wants to kick off? Terry, you
I
want
could
to
say,
start
sure. My reaction to this was, that's a really exciting concept, a starting point. I thought, well, that's, right out of the box, good for you. That's lovely and creative and a really interesting departure point. And it's easy to imagine how, technology could turn this into a amazing immersive experience. I felt like we weren't yet there yet. There was a lot of aspects, I guess, because my own design impulses were like, oh boy, let's have a look at this, let's have a look at that. And I felt that there was just so much left to explore on this one, that it's kind of like a door got opened and now we got a great big room there ready for things to be put into it, and we start kind of elaborating. So I feel like it's just at that point for me, like it's wonderful to start with, and I'd just like to see it fleshed out more.
And like I said, like there's 200 people going to work on this, right? But you need to know where those gaps are, right? You need to introduce and say, I'm a blank and I'm doing this. I will partner with landscape architecture, business planning, licensing to fill in the bag, but I'd like to present my little piece. And so it's all just about us having a comfortable sense of assurance that you do know exactly what all goes into it.
Yeah, and I'll add on to Terry's comments that just like with Haley's project that we just reviewed, this project as well was one where the best takeaway from these projects is the fact that we want to see more. That is definitely a good sign. The fact that it feels incomplete, but yet we want to see the rest of it. Take that as a compliment and not just, this is incomplete, this is bad, don't even continue any further. Like, take this as a huge compliment that we want to see more. Overall, a very strong presentation, design aesthetic, color choices, textures, custom furniture, I thought were very visually interesting and inviting to a guest. Graphic design work was consistent with the branding of the ship, which I really kudos to that. I have a graphic design background, so little minor things like typos, and there's the shows page where it looks like Midnight Show is repeated twice in the deck. I was a little confused by that page, where I think there were supposed to be 2 different shows, but the same slide was repeated. Other than that, those are my nicks against you, but otherwise a very, very good presentation.
Yeah, I'd agree. I think the kind of initial concept idea is good, and like I think it could be executed a little bit more. Just when I was scrolling from top to bottom, that first page about research, I looked at it, I'm like, oh, cool, there's some research. And then as I'm looking at it, it was hard for me to tell, are these percentages, are these numbers? Like just the formatting of that sheet was unclear. Like with your passenger origin, yeah, it listed different origins of passengers, but I'm like, I don't, then you had a number to the side and a number there. So just some of the formatting made me it turned me off just at the beginning. Oh, hopefully it gets better. And then it did, it got better. So all the art and everything was good. I think when you got to the graphics, I was actually like the pamphlets. I mean, you did the room details and all that's fun and nice too, but even the graphics, there's, you had all this, it felt like a museum pamphlet. You had statues in there. And then part of me goes, well, why wasn't that on the ship? All those art, why didn't we see statues? Like it felt like the theme you had for your pamphlet was kind of cool, but we didn't see how it connected to the ship. Or and then the other little note I had was the nighttime show. As I read it a few times and I wanted to see that there was more to it, but it felt like the nighttime show was turn off the lights and look at the stars. And I was like, oh, there's just missed opportunities. Why not drones? Why not this or that. I mean, there could have been much more to the story of your nighttime show other than we're just going to turn off all the lights and let people look at the stars. You know, that's kind of felt very like unimpactful or just missed opportunity. So again, just so much potential here, but it could have just more could have hit, more points could have been hit.
Another thing we're going to throw on your plate of stuff you need to know how to do is benchmarking. Benchmarking is an understanding of what else like this exists, what was the history to how we got to these sorts of things, and then also a little bit of a lens on trends, right? There are a few things that are super hot right now, and part of it is because we're coming out of COVID and people are very hungry for experiences with other humans. Cruise ships are exploding since we got back, and there's more cruise ships being built, more activities and adventures on them. Mini golf is exploding right now, highly themed and technology-based mini golf is exploding. Beautiful, beautiful things are happening in malls because people weren't shopping in person. So there's amazing stuff happening in malls. There's some lovely stuff happening with sports franchises are reimagining themselves, and they're calling upon themed entertainment folks to contribute to that. And major trade shows, the Consumer Electronics Show in Vegas, some of the largest exhibitors brag that they hired themed entertainment companies. So any little bit of information to give your pitch more credibility about where it came from, its feasibility, and its likelihood to succeed, that's a nice little extra layer on top of all the other things we're asking you to do. Any more notes on this one? All right, we're halfway through. We're moving on to our next one. My writing is terrible. It looks like it says Red Terror. Does it actually say Red Terror? Do we have anyone from this team here?
Hello.
I shall see. Okay, since I've been going, I'll jump in, I guess. I found this a really charming and competent bit of work. I love that you understood that the need for integrity of design across a bunch of different disciplines. And I see that happening in this piece of work, that you've been kind of coming at it from a lot of different directions and trying to make them all kind of knit together to make one thing. And I think that's fabulous. That's really good. Particularly like that you went far enough with that compass to make a 3D printed version of it. You know, I think that's really good that you take it that far. You can pick something up and feel it. I mean, if I was presenting to a client, I'd put that damn compass right down in front of them on the table, you know, and make this thing real. And so I think that for that, you've got a good jump on how to make this kind of stuff work. I find this, as I said, really competent and charming. The only part of it that I'm not sure about is the game. I think I like where you're going to get the you know, the clues about this person and the history. What I get though is that one clue only leads you to the next one. It doesn't, I don't get the one more step I'd like to see about what about that person and what do you learn and how can you engage or learn something from, you know, each of those steps that just, you know, which is just really another step of refinement in what you've already got set up as a structure here. So I think, you know, what I wrote as my last part of the comment is this student is ready for professional work. So I think I'm very happy to see this one. Thank you.
Yeah, so any understanding of the state of the union in terms of tech-based or any other type of interactivity is super useful. I run several industry-related news groups, and there was some interesting conversation lately about the number of children crying at the new Universal Mario experiences because some of the games are hard. That's on purpose. They have such a massive amount of pass holders, therefore repeat guests who like to go through things time and time again. So that understanding of how gameplay works, who's your demographic, how are they going to work through it over time? If you can communicate that right up front, you get A++ instead of, oh, is this hard? Or like, I don't know what 2 steps forward are. You know, so just communicate the entire anticipated guest experience and then some of the details. And you'll just get rave reviews because people will want to do it rather than being intimidated by it. Anyone else?
Is this the red triangle?
Yeah, that's the red triangle.
Okay.
My writing is so bad it said Terra, red triangle.
No, it's a different order than the actual score sheet.
Okay. Yeah, I guess from a story standpoint, I was missing the logic and cohesiveness as to what it has to do with the Bermuda Triangle. Bermuda Triangle is one of my favorite themes. I've written, you know, many shows and attractions based on stories there, and I just didn't really get the connection between why it was called Red Triangle. So maybe it would have been helpful to explain that better and make that connection a little stronger.
Can I ask you to speak to that?
Yeah. So there wasn't, I kind of played into the, I guess, mystery aspect of the Bermuda Triangle. I have like family background and like personal involvement with Bermuda itself in the Bermuda Triangle. So that's ultimately what I knew I wanted to explore on in terms of theming and gameplay. And there wasn't necessarily a particular reason for it to be named Red Triangle. I wrote it into the story saying that that was the sails of the ship. That was the color of the sails of the ship that the main character would take when she would embark on her journeys. But it was really ultimately a personal reasoning, and I wanted to personally see that come to fruition. So that was kind of my reasoning. It was written slightly into the story, but there wasn't like a huge, I guess, give as to why it was named the way that it was.
Yeah, I just think
Anyone
you set up expectations for people. That's
yeah.
all.
Right.
Anyone in the room over
Sorry.
50? What does red mean?
Bad. Terror.
No, it means Russian.
Oh.
Yeah, so through the late 80s, what we were scared of in America was the Russians, the Cold War, actually from about 1948 on. So anytime you put red in the front of something, it means Russian. And that's us, right? That's our baggage. And it can come from different. So just, again, that's just a really good reason to do just a little research on the history of names. Does anything else have a similar name? Who's your primary demographic? Stuff like that.
There was an expectation of this being about Cuba, and particularly related to Florida, and Cuba is related to it. And so I thought there was much more spy or intrigue related to it when I first started looking at it. And so there was something interesting for my expectation. You then changed it, which is okay. But from my initial responses, I can maybe there's something related to this with spy or Cuba and Florida, all those things.
I think one thing we're hitting on here too is this was an individual project, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So and a lot of times story is something that gets really developed well when there's a team and editors looking back and forth. And so there's always going to be holes when just a single story is created from a single point of view. But if I step story aside for a second, I think one thing this was really strong at is of all the presentations so far, it actually understood program quite well. It kind of understood, you're accommodating people in rooms, you need restaurants, you need this and that, and it actually kind of laid out the program really well. And I liked the idea of the gaming, like the main gameplay hub and all that. And then it mentioned about 17 story-driven interactives, but I didn't really get to hear anything about those. And I know there's only so much time to do these, but I thought from a program point of view, like it was really successful going, hey, we're creating a destination, we're providing all these amenities. It's a gameplay focused, activity. I mean, and how do we grow from there? So I think just like a lot of these, I had a great start, but I think the story could be something that would be developed and improved with a group of editors and whatnot.
One thing that we also know is that we're not seeing all your work, right? You look really, really hard on this stuff. And somewhere in various folders on your hard drive and elsewhere is that extra data. So another presentation technique is do exactly what's asked of you, however many slides, however many minutes, however long. But then have in your hip pocket where you can pull out, oh, boom, here's a link to all that research I did, or here's the primetime cafe that inspired me, right? And then if it's up to the reviewers to choose to dig into that or not, there's a phenomenal attraction design competition that comes out of Ohio, and they will give you all Zamperla's stats, right? They're taking the PDFs from the manufacturer in case I'm wondering about shear or spin or whatever. It's not part of their obligation, but if I'm like, wait, can that ride handle that? Boom, I can just click on it and find out. So have it available for me in case I'm super curious.
Yeah, and just real quick before we move on, I just wanted to comment that what I really loved about this presentation, that it continued to get better and better with every additional link that I explored. So that was a major plus, is that it just continued to build, and really good explanation of the guest experience, where not all these actually walk you through from a guest perspective how things work, operational side of things. This one really did a great job telling a story from a guest perspective, not necessarily story as a whole, but just from that guest. And then the only critique, which is not really a critique, is that the game design documentation link was not working for me. So every time I tried clicking on it, I got nothing. And that was something I was really interested to learning more about. And unfortunately, because the link wasn't working, I couldn't. So I could only take what was included in your overall deck, which didn't go deep into it. So yeah, that was the only major critique, but great job.
Thank you. Another, by the way, you live, you learn. And I didn't see it on these ones, but if you're going to show a video in any presentation, it's probably not in your best interest to send a link to YouTube, because if I go to YouTube and I see your video, you don't know what YouTube's going to serve me up next. And there may be something inappropriate. So where you can, embed your videos directly into your work. All right, let's move on to Vulcania.
Hello, Daniel Malmont here. Can everybody hear me?
You look like you have props.
Nice.
Hello. And the hour right here.
Right there. That's lovely.
Yes.
Okay, so nice to meet you, Nathaniel. And this was so nice to see this project. You know, what a delight to see somebody using their hands to build something that's fun and says something. I thought the effort was, you know, the direction that you took, really interesting. I like a mini attraction, basically, you know. So kudos for innovation and just thinking out of the box and having fun and doing something that's, you know, tangible. I mean, that's, I think, wonderfully refreshing and stuff. So as far as the presentation part goes, though, I felt like that felt like it needed a bit of work, you know. Those little videos drove me nuts. Just a little piece of a video that gets you started and then boom, you're off again, you know. I think that in terms of the overall presentation, this is such a cool thing that it deserves like an introduction, maybe some, you know, diagrams of how you were starting the idea, maybe some construction shots of you testing parts of it, you know, so we can get the idea, build it up, you know, and then do like it's a story. Maybe there's a person involved and finally that person gets a drink out of this thing, or, you know, and it becomes, that's the story, or several people. I don't know how you would want to build that necessarily, but I think that's such a beautiful, interesting little piece that it just needed a presentation wrapped around it so that it became a whole piece. That's all. So I give you lots of marks for what you did. I just think it needed a better presentation.
Got it.
Yeah.
And in the event, Nathaniel or everybody else, you're like, but that's not what I do. This is what I do. You get a team, right? None of us work individually. And it is actually, it's a bit surprising to me to see how many submissions we had this year that were individuals. This industry is team-based. And guess what? That's hard. Working on teams, collaborating across disciplines and schedules, maybe even languages, is very, very hard. And that's why it's useful for you to be able to say that you worked on a team, you sorted this thing out. It has been mentioned earlier that it looks like it came from one creative vision, even though it was 3 or 4 of you. Worth its weight, its gold in our industry. Like it's astounding what some of you as individuals have pulled off. But that doesn't really reflect what the work environment is like. You need to be able to work across time zones. It'd be nice. Us right now are from all over the country. Like none of us are in the same state right now. And being able to use these tools to communicate to both an engineer and an art director, that is super valuable. So think about maybe a business person, maybe a person who's expert in documentation or videography to help seam this together. And you get a nice, tight, cohesive pitch.
Yeah, I just wanted to add, obviously this is a product more than an experience, but as a cocktail connoisseur, it was very much one of my favorites. Super cool, but where's my drink? Like, I didn't see the finale. I wanted to I wanted to see the results of all this
That's
cool
right.
stuff. You know, that was my main comment is, where's my drink?
You big tease.
Got it.
Yeah, and it's interesting, like everything that you all are showing us, we can point to. Yep, that exists in our industry here and there. So it's not as if, oh well, I didn't see the drink, I didn't see the whatever. Everyone has a technical and creative proficiency, and it's really nice to see you physically show that. But it also situational awareness of what goes around it. Like, where's my payoff? Where's my drink? Also, we should say themed bars and cocktails, hugely on trend right now.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, I got to go to my meeting, but thank you guys so much. I will follow up.
Thank you.
Thank you for your time, sir.
Ryan.
Bye-bye. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Yeah, to add on to what they were saying, Nathaniel, I my notes were very similar, fun and entertaining. I definitely believe there is a market segment for a product like this. I mean, this is a real product, and this, if done correctly, could actually be a successful product. But yeah, like Terry nailed right from the beginning, the marketing of this product. Oof. That was rough, man. So
Okay.
very crude. So definitely partnering with possibly even a marketing student at school, like going for somebody who understands advertising and marketing and can really help you with creating the content to then get this across as like this super sleek drink maker that is themed and fun. I mean, you'll be the highlight of the party by having this thing there, you know, tied in with all your 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea themed parties, whatever you want, you know, pirate ships, everything. It's fitting, as MK mentioned, with the current trends of all the themed bars and immersive experiences. And I mean, it would blend right in with Nate's background there at Trader Sam's Grog Grotto. So, you know, kudos seriously on the quality and physically making something that actually works. That's pretty amazing. So take it to market now. Do your research and let, I want to buy.
And there's another layer that rarely the undergrads consider, but sir, have a consider copyright or patent. If you have particularly any original working parts, mechanical parts to this, have a quick look. Your university has a innovation and patent and research office. Reach out to them and they can give you some direction. Because some of the stuff you may want to protect, or you may want to, if it was a group project, spin up a tiny little LLC on how to get this to market. And it's important that you do understand. And maybe the decision is no, it's not worth whatever the time or the money you would have to put into it. But at least have a little bit of look into that so that you can protect your own work.
Got it.
And the patent market has just changed. It used to be you had to do the research to prove you were the first. It's changed. It's now first to patent wins, even if there's plenty of examples of other stuff like it beforehand. So you want to get out ahead of that. And also it's no longer, you're no longer allowed to patent designs. You used to be able to, the little bulldog on the Mack truck is a famous example. But just like do a little research, connect to experts who can help you. That would be, again, a really nice layer of professionalism for you to be able to say, I did this as a student, here's how it works. Oh, and by the way, it's protected.
The thing with this one is this feels like it's here's the piece, we're gonna go market it, go sell it. I think there's a lot more growth to this. And I think there's a lot more that it can go further, whether it's an actual whole bar setup, right? Or it's at a resort or a very exclusive hotel as a large sculptural piece that then becomes functional also. And having worked on projects where there's olive oil dispensers or pineapple clocks or all of these other things.
Chocolate fountains.
Yes, chocolate, whatever. I think that you worked really hard on a beautiful product, but you got to look further ahead. And don't just look a year ahead, but look further ahead as to where could this go beyond where the germinal idea is.
Thank you.
You need, Nathaniel, are you over 21?
I am.
You need to go to Vegas, baby. You need to walk every single themed hotel, restaurant, and bar, and you'll find a lot of potential clients.
Yeah.
Thank you.
We're good for that. We're next up. We have Locked On Set.
Hello.
Good day. Who wants to kick us off here with Locked On Set?
I shouldn't go first every time. Somebody else should jump in.
Who's been quiet?
Mark, did you have any notes you wanted to add? I don't know if you even got to say anything on the last one.
Mark, could you actually outline what
there you
area
go.
development or master planning is? I don't know that that's on every student's radar.
Sure. Yeah. Well, so I mean, master planning, I kind of play two roles, I guess, but a creative director obviously is a creative vision keeper, but a master planner is someone who oversees the big scale project, typically, theme parks or any planning type projects, but it goes from anywhere from high level planning of the park to detailed planning of lands and specifics. So like I have a degree in landscape architecture and a business degree are kind of my two backgrounds. So it's where I landed in this industry was in more of a planner's point of view. But yeah, so more that's me. But the on the Locked On Set, I'm trying to think. I pull these up as I go and then try to look at my notes again and see. I think it was I mean it was okay. It was fun. It was a graphic, all of the presentation was clean and had a lot of character to it, but it was one of those other ones that I just felt didn't really hit the mark. There was an effort of not using an IP, but I didn't really know what it was. So I mean, not to start super negative, but there's a lot of words, a lot of examples, but not a lot of design beyond just the narration and, it's another escape room experience. So.
Anyone else has a?
Yeah.
I guess.
Sorry, go ahead, Terry.
Go ahead. Okay, sure. I'll just be quick. I just felt like I could do a little bit of a counterbalance gap on that. Okay. So once again, it comes down to this thing about let's define what we're doing here. And if you say I'm going for a locked room, then I would say this is a pretty cool concept. Using you're doing a stand-in for maybe it's a Seinfeld show or something like that. Obviously, just like we talked about with Minecraft, you do something that's parallel to an actual IP as an exercise so that you can kind of go through it. But I thought it was a kind of as locked rooms go. This one stands out for me because of the idea of using a familiar set. Most locked rooms, you have no idea what you're going into. But this time, because of as you stated in your setup, you're a viewer of this program long enough, you're going to know where things are in that room. And you're going to know a lot of details about it because of having watched a lot of episodes. So I think that conceit is really a cool idea for a locked room. So I give you a lot of credit for that, And then once you choose the particular room that you're going for, that gives you a graphic look, which happens to be this look, and you carried that through nicely, which means that's great. That means the two things are, reinforcing one another, the basic idea and the way you're laying it out. I wasn't looking for a storyline here. I was just looking for consistency in terms of those moments that you have that would make a person who cares about this show feel like, wow, I was part of the show there for a little while, because I knew my way around and I either got through the locked room or I didn't, but I felt like I was involved with so I think there's that quality about it that I have to give you credit for. So I think it was a job well done within that, concept that you defined for yourself.
Yeah, no, I'll add that what the presentation really showed a strong understanding of escape rooms and the different forms of gameplay available to tell a story. The concept was one I haven't really seen before, so kudos on your originality. And the one thing, though, that I will say is since you were coming from a writing program and not a design-focused program, I would have appreciated a more detailed narrative of the entire guest experience. So something actually told from the guest perspective as they're traveling through unlocking and finishing these different, the games. That just would have given it a whole different context, and it would have felt like a fully fleshed out storyline, as well as just a simple conceptual layout of the room for reference. Like you did a good job of describing parts of it, but even just a real simple box design with just identifying here, And I think you did have, actually, I take that back. I think you did have a super simple description where you even talked about a TV that you passed through, but maybe just something a little more fleshed out to help better understand where are the games, because I mean, I have experience with escape rooms, so I know where you're coming from and I can make the connections with some of those games, but just having a better understanding of the guest experience during the allotted time and how to solve the puzzles and things like that. If you would have had it fully fleshed out and said, here you go, that would have been great. So that would be the only comment to just make it even better.
One thing that's also pretty appealing about a concept like this is how expandable it is. This is a framework, right, that you can hang a lot of different things on, and particularly if you're approaching a company that has a lot of different IP, and that's very appealing. All right, we got one more, Jungle Jam. We have a student here from Jungle Jam to kick us off. Nope. Off we go for posterity. Michael, what do you want to say about Jungle Jam?
I'll kick it off. So for first year students working on a collaborative project, I felt like this was a good start in team building and FEC master planning, but in general, it needs more work to better define the space, the overall aesthetic for the land, and the Jungle Jam should be explored further with concept art that really captures the guest experience. So those were my comments.
I guess it might be easy for me to slot in and say ditto, more or less. I thought at the beginning, well, it's an interesting concept. We're going to have race day, in a jungle. There's an interesting interface, two different kind of, things that normally aren't put together. And I was looking for moments then, and illustrations that would kind of, leverage that interesting idea. So I now understand more about that this is a group project and that the dynamics probably were a good idea. I remember group projects, and I was in architecture school, and we just fought during our group projects at first, because everybody had such an ego, and then it'd splinter off into other groups and all this kind of stuff. It takes a while to get to do that in a way that is functional. But as somebody, I think it was MK who said earlier, get used to working in groups. It's really, really important and necessary. The fruits of almost anything I've done that's worthwhile has always been a group effort. It's always been something that we can point to that we did. And so good that you're working in the groups. Somebody has to take the lead, or you have to find ways to come to consensus so that the best ideas can actually live when you're working in groups. Sometimes the best ideas die because the wrong person has them, or whatever. So it's worth doing all that. But a great start here. It just needed somebody, or you all, to sort of pick it up now and make it real.
Yeah, and if there's first year students on this, that's remarkable. Right, you have 3 more goes before you graduate, and this is not the only game in town. There's other opportunities, and you're just going to get better and better and really hone best practices. And now you have all of these new names to add to your Rolodex to reach out to and say, like, particularly the show writing student, you present yourself completely differently than engineers, which is completely different than theater, completely different than graphic design. So once you have all the goodies, like, connect with professionals on how you present that specifically for your industry.
If I can jump in, this one I did not take a look at. I'm part of a different group that looked at other projects. Never received a link for this one, so I would love to be able to take a look at it. If someone can send me that, the spreadsheet I received did not have this link attached to it.
Oh, what? You want to do more work? Coming at you.
I would love to be able to take a look at it. It's been really terrific.
Just on the website there, you can find it. But
thank you.
Just one little last comment too. I mentioned earlier in this call that when you're on these group projects, it's hard to have one voice, and especially in a first year. And just as evidence of it, where I can see that there's 8 slides in this presentation, there's 4 people. It was very clear that you just kind of said, you get the first 2, I get the next 2, I get the next 2, and then let's just put it together. So like the very first 3 slides, even the formatting, there's a green box around the title. And then the next slide, that green box is gone. So clearly someone did the first 3 slides and then someone else did the next slides or whatever. So make sure it's a little more, and then one person obviously knew AutoCAD and they did the CAD plan, right? That was probably their contribution to the group. So for me, it's very clear this was a 4-person project and it felt like 4 different people putting pages together. And for first year, I mean, kudos, that's where you get, but I hope by 4th year you've learned and you're not doing that same kind of split up among your project to try to figure out how to work and create a single vision.
Yeah, no, we're not kidding when we say this is hard. It's very hard. It's not against it's against our nature, right? We want to sort of own our own destiny and get nervous if other people have pieces of that. And that's when you need to practice it. There's really great resources out there, books and activities you can do to get better at this. But a lot of people do think that 4 things presented in sequence is a group project. It's not. That's 4 people who just happen to be on the stage at the same time. True collaboration is an integration that can be tricky, but amazing things happen as a result. And not only, there's some research out of Carnegie Mellon I can send you if you like. Not only do we do a higher quality work when we have more bodies and expertise to add to it, but we invent new things. And I think we want both. We want both higher quality end product. And heck, we all want to invent new innovative things that aren't possible just as individuals in sequence. Have any more feedback on our jungle jam? Any questions from the participants, as long as you have this brain trust in front of you?
I wanted to tell all the students one little thing that when I went to school, it was 5 years of architecture, and I failed the first project in every year. And in the course of each year, I learned what this was all about and got better marks, you know. But it was for me all about, like, every beginning of every step of, you know, going up the ladder of understanding what architecture is all about. I just did not get it at first. So, but then I did, you know. I think I'm just saying, have heart. If you feel like you're partway there, don't worry, it all comes. And especially because if you work in groups, I think, by the way, the last thing I'll say about that, for me, working in groups is just like being going out to play in recess when you were back at school. You played with the other kids. It's the same. You know, think of it that way, that you're playing together, and there's always some loudmouth who wants to take over, and the rest of the group goes, wait a minute, we want to do this or that. And you find ways to get consensus, you know, and it's just playing, and it's just playing like kids. And if you think of it that way, group work gets a lot easier.
Yeah, and there's so many
work.
resources available to you. But if you choose to do something, there's something you're not doing, right? So make some smart choices. There is no other point in your life, aside from your years at university, you have access to more resources, clubs, discounted memberships, human beings. So take advantage of that. And a lot of the folks here on this call can help you with that. I hope everyone has written down all the names on this call. You're going to link in us all, right? I do about 400 resume and portfolio reviews a year. There's associations and memberships you can join, and it's an ongoing relationship. It's not just a one and done, right? You will do a resume review, and then in a year you're applying for a different type of job, and you reach out and you say, is this the same, or do I morph it? What if you want to apply for jobs overseas? That's also different. Please do take advantage, and we will have lifelong friendships.
Yep.
And also, even just applying for a job has massively changed in the last 10 years for sure, last 3 years for sure. So even if you're like, well, I had a job, how you might get jobs this day and age, what they are, contractor versus staff, versus an independent company hired, like that's all different. So just raise your hand and ask. There's plenty of people who are happy to help you. Any of you members of any student organizations, industry related? USITT, IAPA, TEA. There's loads of content and people out there that you should be connected to, and they all have discounted student membership, discounted student participation to events. Sometimes you can go for free if you volunteer for a few hours. So for sure, take advantage of that because it's fun, and you get to meet cool people.
And the price dramatically increases once you're no longer a student. So take
The
advantage
minute
of
you
it.
graduate.
All right.
Right,
Thank you.
Kat, good question.
Yeah.
Email me directly, Kat. Kat had a question about as a dramatic writer. That's a big
Oh, yeah.
question. Email me, find me on LinkedIn, send me a note, and I will send you some resources on that because you are in a very unique slot. You're, I think, the only discipline that doesn't put all their work online to be reviewed for a job. Everyone else puts everything out there. I mean, you don't. And also things like master planning we had mentioned, that was the only division at Imagineering that was under lock and key. Because if I'm bulldozing through the Everglades to build a road to this new construction at Disney, that has massive business implications for the state of Florida, right? Is there going to be a McDonald's on that road? Is there going to be a gas station on that road? So other folks aren't so much caring about that sort of level of secrecy. So really get in touch with people who do what you want to do so they can tell you all the ins and outs.
All right, great.
All
Can
right,
you
sorry,
all hear
Nate.
me? My yeah, no, my mic it works. Everyone can hear me? Yes, okay, good. Okay, so we have one person on a cruise ship unavailable to be contacted right now. I won't say who that is, but one of our groups is that we're to be determined on the scheduling. We do have a group with Mike Blau and Dave Cooperstein, Heidi Hirsch, and Mike Libby. That will be July 2nd around the same time. That's a Tuesday. Whenever we do have all the scores in, everything is tabulated. We know who the winners are of the various categories. And so, is that me? We're going to go ahead and we're going to announce those. Freddie Martin will be announcing those at the last session, whether that's July 2nd or if the other session ends up being just after July 2nd, it will be the last part of the last session. So be sure to be around for that. And we will also be sending individual scorecards out to each one of you about your project. So look for that in your email. And that's all I have.
All right, thanks so much for organizing this and for keeping at it for 4 years.
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, wonderful.
And thanks, and
Thank
he
you.
left, but thanks for Jesse does all the back end on this for us. All the tabulations and score sheets and business. So thanks for the man behind the curtain.
Thank you all. Great job,
Thank you all.
everyone.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
Thank you,
great
everyone.
job.
Projects.
Lovely. Yeah.
We'll have this posted online shortly, and we'll see you at the next feedback session. And of course, all the panelists are welcome on joining. So we will
Great,
see you
thank
later.
you.
Thanks and have a great day.
Thank you.
Thank
Bye.
you guys.